looking inward for that answer that we think we've already got.
Yeah.
And we miss the signals, we miss the messages, and we actually aren't being introspective.
No, Jesus flipped
Yeah,
tables.
yes.
So,
I took my first solo trip. It was one of the steps of liberation for me.
in order for you to be able to serve other people, in order for you to be able to show up for other people, you have to be able to feed yourself.
I'm not going to be protesting. I'm not doing that. I'm not signing any petitions. And if you want to give me a hard time for that, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Think about those moments where you felt at peace. Think about those moments where you felt safe, where you felt happy, and find a way to recreate those moments.
Yes, I love that. You owe it to yourself to be introspective.
You're watching We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. And I'm your host, Crystle Johnson. We are a community of Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. Each Thursday, we feature the stories of Black women who have set themselves free from the expectations of others and are choosing to live on their own terms.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to another episode of We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. I am your host, Crystle Johnson, and we are a community of Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. I'm really excited to be here today in LA to have a conversation with my new sis, Melinda King.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Melinda.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you. And of course, we've had an opportunity to chat with each other for a few minutes as well, just about your story. And there's so many things about your experiences that overlap with my own. And I think it just speaks to the fact that someone else is always going through some of the same things that you're going through, which is why I really love this show, because people who are thinking about freedom and they're thinking about liberation, they may think that their story is a different story. And while there may be nuances to their story, we're all kind of like going through some of the same things.
And I so appreciate you having this platform because in a way it's validating, you know, the feelings that you feel. So I'm excited to just get into it today.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the serious things,
Okay.
I want to start with something really light, which is this segment that we like to call This or That. So I'm going to ask you 3 this or that questions, and maybe we'll have some commentary. Who knows? Depends on what you say.
Okay. All right.
So first one is going to be spades or Uno.
Oh, girl. It's a miracle I graduated from high school because we played spades all the time.
Really?
At lunch, on the bus, in between class, maybe during class. So yeah, I'm a spades girl. Yeah.
I love that so much. I used to go visit my biological mother when I was younger, and they would play spades all day on the weekend. And I mean, at first I was like, what are they playing? Like, what's happening? And of course they would be playing for like pennies and quarters. So it wasn't like a lot of money on the table, but still.
It's serious. it's like serious. Bragging rights. And don't mess up. Because if you mess up, you're going to have to sit the next round out.
Yeah, absolutely. It does get really loud.
Yeah.
It's very boisterous.
I love it,
what do you mean? You just cut over me.
Oh, yeah. And so, a super funny story. Over the holidays, I was playing spades with my family. I didn't have on my glasses because I was trying to be cute. And I got clubs and spades mixed
Not
up.
the clubs and the spades.
Yes, I did. You know that. And they were like, you are so lucky we're family. So, yeah. So, I'm a spades girl.
Okay, fantastic. I love that so much.
Yeah.
And then if you think about music a little bit, so would you say old school R&B or 2000s hip hop?
I'm an old school R&B. You know, I'm a Luther. I think I saw Luther maybe 3 or 4 times before he passed.
Wow.
You know, when I'm in that zone at home, when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, I'm doing the old school R&B. Yeah.
I love that so much. And so I've shared this on the show before, but I'm adopted and my parents are much older. So my dad turned 86 just this last year around Christmas.
Oh, wow,
so
what a
like
blessing.
I got all the old school music.
Yes.
And, obviously, like, my friends, they're like, yeah, like 2000s R&B hip hop is what my mama used to clean the house to. And I'm like, yes, and like real old school music is what I grew up listening to for sure.
Yes. So I'm an R&B, and old school, a little new school. I get a little confused about what's old and what's new,
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Those samples, they be coming back.
I know.
The beats.
I know. And my kids are like, oh, listen to this new song. I was like, that is not a new song.
It is not original. It's not original. And then the last one is Sunday brunch or self-care Sunday.
I am an extrovert with a capital E. So I do love that brunch. However, I really don't spend time around people that I don't like.
Yeah.
So I got to know who going to be there.
Who going to be there?
Who all going to be there. And then I decide. And if it's not a crew I want to hang out with, then, I'm going to do that self-care.
Yeah. Okay. I love that answer. And I love how honest you are about who all going to be there.
Yeah.
Because I can't hang with everybody.
I can't. And part of my journey is I'm not going to do those fake moments anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it.
Okay. That is accurate. That is so accurate. I was just telling someone this morning, I was like, I used to be around people just to say, oh, I want to preserve this relationship. But after going through this transformation and learning to love myself more, I'm like, why would I be around people I don't like?
Yep.
You got to go.
Yeah. You got to go or I'm going to go.
Exactly. Exactly that. So I'm really excited to hop into that. And before we do, tell everyone, who is Melinda King?
Okay, so I am originally from Alabama. Went to college at the University of Alabama. I have to say, Roll Tide. You just have to do it if you went to Alabama. I have spent the last 20 plus years in a variety of human resources and diversity, equity, and inclusion roles, and over the last year, made a decision to step away from corporate America, from higher education. I am the proud mother of 2 adult sons, and I'm a proud member of Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
So, and right now I live in Dallas.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I love that we both live in Dallas. Not in Dallas, in Texas. Yes. Yeah. I have actually enjoyed Texas a lot. I moved there in 2019.
Okay.
So it's definitely been one of those places. I live in Austin. So it's been one of those places that has felt like a bubble in comparison to the rest of Texas.
Yeah, you can find your community. I think you have to be a little deliberate around doing it, but you can find your community. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just even working in the DEI space. So I've been in the DEI space for over a decade, and it can definitely be like a role that is thankless. It can definitely be a role that will take you through it. It will definitely take you through it. And then we all know like how it is being weaponized and villainized at this moment. Because, the U.S. always needs a scapegoat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, part of that work, which is so emotional because it's bigger than just what we do during the day.
Yeah.
And it can take a lot out of you, and it has taken a lot out of me.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with, chilling out a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. And what I'm assuming is that introspection had something to do with that decision that you made to kind of step away and to focus on you. So what are the lies that we tell ourselves about introspection and reflection? I think that we are often afraid to look at ourselves in the mirror when it comes to reflection and introspection because we're scared of what we might find.
Yes.
So what are some of the lies we tell ourselves about introspection?
I think when we take this moment to say, I'm looking inward, right? But I think we're looking inward for that answer that we think we've already got.
Yeah.
And we miss the signals. We miss the messages. And we actually aren't being introspective. We're basically doing kind of that type of listening where you're just listening for that point where somebody agrees with you.
Yeah, the confirmation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that, true introspection is sitting with yourself and taking it in and being willing to see a version of what is real that's totally different than what you thought it was.
Yes.
And I think we get messages. I throughout my life, I felt like I got messages that I just held on to. They felt like failures, but I really held on to them for so long. And I feel like those messages were telling me, you need to be moving a big part of your life in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel that so much. I feel like over the last several months, like I took some time away, and I'd like to call it a sabbatical. And I feel like for the first 60 days of that sabbatical, it was very much superficial introspection.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we'll get into a little bit more of your story, but I took a trip. I took a solo trip, my very first solo trip. And when I did that, I was actually able to really have reflection and really have introspection outside of that superficial, okay, I'm sitting still, but I'm watching TV and I'm on TikTok and I'm doing all these other things. So I'm really not really reflecting.
Right.
I'm just resting, if you will.
Right.
I'm just not doing work right now, but I wasn't really doing the work that it took to be more introspective and be more reflective.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally relate to that. I think I had shared with you that I was at a turning point in my career where I had, a quote unquote good job. And, we're always told, those good jobs, you keep those good jobs. But the environment was not feeding my soul. It wasn't feeding my soul in a way that I felt that I was being asked to play small.
Yeah.
I was being asked to sit at the table, but just be quiet.
Right. Don't shake the table.
Yeah.
Because Jesus flipped tables.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
take some nice notes and, and I had so many people on both sides saying, okay, people saying, it's a good job. Come on, people, you get to live a good life. Just don't worry about it. And then people like, oh no, you got to shake things up. And then people in the middle. And I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I took my first solo trip. It wasn't a business trip. It wasn't, I'm going to a wedding. I'm going to a family reunion. I decided on Thursday, and on Sunday I was on a plane, and I laughed, I cried, but I had so much clarity. I was just with myself. And some days, all I did was sit on the balcony of my hotel, and it was one of the steps of liberation for me, in that I liberated myself from, work environment that, was not good for me. It was not good for me physically or mentally.
Yeah, totally. My solo trip, I went on a Virgin voyage from Rome to Miami.
Wow.
And I felt like going on a cruise was the better choice for me because I didn't have to plan anything. Like, I showed up with my suitcase. I got my little cabin. They got your itinerary every day. They have options of things for you to choose from. There's a spa on board. There's food. I didn't have to think very much about what I was doing or where I was. And then, of course, I just felt safe on the boat. Like, this, like I don't need to think about anything. And literally, like, being able to sit on the balcony and watch the water. Now, by day 13, I was ready to get off the boat.
You wanted some land.
Yeah, because it was a 16-day voyage, and it was 9 days at sea on the back end from when we left Spain, like the Canary Islands, to Miami. So yeah, those last 9 days was kind of rough. I think I sat with myself even more during those times. And I did things that I wouldn't normally do. So I'm the type of person, or I have been the type of person, to be in my head a ton. So I'm thinking, you judging me, like, like, what is going on? What should I be doing? Like, how should I show up? What's the best way to show up? How do I show up perfectly? Those are the ways that I used to show up. But that trip helped me to not take myself too seriously, to step outside of the zone of perfection and overthinking. I did trivia knowing I didn't know the answers. I did a sushi making class. I did puzzles. Like, I went on excursions and talked to people. And you mentioned that you're an extrovert. I think people often think I'm an extrovert, but I'm a little more introverted. Like, being around people sometimes does drain me.
Okay.
But I just stepped outside of my normal comfort zone, and according to my therapist, I basically gave myself my own form of exposure therapy, exposing myself to all the things that I wouldn't normally do.
And then not holding yourself like to this standard, like this impossible standard to be perfect at everything.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly. So I want to dig more into like how introspection has transformed you. You talked about the trip that you went on and how you stepped away, but how did it transform your life, being able to step back and be more introspective?
You know, I think the introspective journey, you know, has phases, right? And so I've gone through a few of them. So, you know, working in corporate America, being in environments where people were constantly telling you how to be successful. You know, I look around, I see people who I felt like I knew had less experience, less education, and I saw them, you know, moving at a pace that was different from mine. And then you get this insight, well, you need to have your hair straight. You talked so loud. I had a vice president tell me one time, you're using your hands when you talk makes people nervous. Like, what the heck did you think I was going to do with my hands? Right.
Yeah.
And so,
what should I be doing? Yeah.
And so I had those moments where I tried to adjust, and I felt like I was failing miserable at trying to be someone else. So I did that moment where I said, you know, when you make decisions based on who you are and what you know is right, regardless of the outcome, you feel better about yourself, even if you don't get the outcome you want. But when you make those decisions that somebody else has told you to manage that way, regardless of the outcome, even if it feels like it's positive, you know, you feel crappy. Yeah. So I really stopped listening to other people, and I really started just saying, you know, this is who I am. All those things that people said, you know, about just how I show up, I'm showing up like this. And if you don't like that, then, you know, you leave the room.
Yeah, you don't deserve me.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think that was the first step. There have been things that have happened where I gave a lot. I gave a lot of my emotional energy, physical energy, and in those moments, I still felt like people were saying it's still not good enough. And I said, yep, I'm not giving that energy to people anymore. So we talked about it. I'm very specific around about who I spend my time with. Yeah. I am not going to be around people who I don't like.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just simply means I don't want to spend time with you.
Yeah, I don't like how I feel around you.
I don't like how I feel around you. Absolutely. And I know that you know, and we've all had those moments where I want to increase my network. I don't need that. Like, I have a crew, and with that crew, I feel really good about myself, and that's been part of my self-discovery. Yeah. And then, you know, finally, I spent some time working on a political campaign that didn't go the way I wanted it to, and it left me just almost not even able to get out of bed because I felt like I had done so much. And so as a result of feeling like a lot of others failed me in that moment, I have reduced my circle of support, my circle of community to a extremely small group of individuals. Yeah. And that's been liberating. So I don't know that I mentioned to you that my son and I do a podcast. It's called Mom Knows Ball. And sports is a backdrop for us talking about our relationship. That podcast for me was liberating.
Yeah.
It gave me permission to not be focusing on social justice. Like, we don't even cross the line, even though sports and social advocacy is very much aligned.
Connected.
But I give myself permission, preparing for that podcast, recording that podcast, where I'm talking about sports, I'm talking about goofy takes with my son, and that has been so liberating. I thought, I think back on my life and the things that I did that I enjoyed, and one of the things that I used to really enjoy was going to live theater. And I told somebody the reason I enjoyed it was I didn't have to worry about anything because I had to focus on what was happening live.
Yes.
I couldn't watch TV and go back and check something I missed. And that was liberating to me because I didn't feel like I had to be solving all the world's problems. I will work on a very few things that I want to have impact on, but somebody else is going to have to take up some of these other things. I'm resting.
Yeah. Listen, absolutely. So you said so many things that I really connected with. First of all, the resting part, and like Black women taking this collective breath to say, look, we have shown up and we have tried to save you from yourself many, many, many times. And now we are tired of trying to save you from yourself. So if you want to burn the shit down, go ahead.
Yep.
Ahead, burn it down.
You know, I'm going to be like, I'm going to be drinking my wine while it's going on. I'm going to be taking care of my finances because I feel like the next two generations of my family are going to need a layer of protection, although we know money doesn't protect you from everything.
Exactly.
But that's the one thing that I did shift in terms of, like, focusing on creating a little bit more generational wealth because I'm not going to be protesting. I'm not doing that. I'm not signing any petitions. And if you want to give me a hard time for that, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm like unapologetic about, I'm unbothered about that. So there you go.
Yes, we are unbothered and prioritizing our own peace and our own joy. And that was another thing that you mentioned too, is this idea of joy, or this act and experience of joy. Just making sure that we're finding space for joy, because I think that with all the things going on in the world, with the world literally being on fire, people will make you feel like you need to show up in a certain way. And I think what we don't realize, and what we haven't realized up until this point of this collective breath, is that in order for you to be able to serve other people, in order for you to be able to show up for other people, you have to be able to feed yourself. And you mentioned like feeding your soul and like things feeding your soul. That's important. Like, what is it that I need to do to make myself feel joy? What are the things that I love? And even for me, like, I don't think that I really knew the things that I loved. I knew the things that I was told to love. So I think even taking that time out to be still, to settle, to, just have introspection, I've been able to discover all the things that I never knew that I love to do. And those things are feeding my energy, along with just being around people that I feel good around.
Yes.
And getting rid of the people who I don't feel good around, because all they're doing is just sucking the goodness and the light out of me. And I want to be able to, shine my light, be present.
Absolutely. And you should. And you absolutely should. So I'm glad you continue on that journey, and then you create like an outlet for us to talk about that. Because I think there's a narrative around this strong Black woman. And sometimes when we are just showing up for ourselves, people will say, you're being selfish, or, well, this is not the time for that. And I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, I don't really care what you think. I mean, I had a conversation maybe 2 weeks ago. It's my time. This is not time for us to not, you know, be fighting. And I'm like, well, you go fight. Yeah. Again, I'm going to get my little glass of Riesling, maybe a little vodka with, you know, some lime, and I'm chilling.
I love that. I'm going to have my old fashioned in hand, my sidecar. I like Cabernet. So yeah, that's what I'll be having too.
Yeah. So y'all going and fight.
To any Black woman who's listening to this show right now, what would you say to a Black woman who is struggling with introspection? What homework would you give her to focus on introspection?
I think it's important to create that space. You know, everybody doesn't have the time or the resources to take a 6-day vacation or a 14-day vacation, but you do have the time and the resources to kind of sit with yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I think is important is think about those moments where you really felt at peace and you really felt like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yes.
And try to figure out a way to duplicate those moments. And, you know, the sports, I felt guilty about so focusing on sports all the time. But that was where I was happy.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, I can do this. I can bring, you know, and have my son spend time with him. So then my advice would be create those moments where you get to think, to be by yourself, and think about those moments where you felt at peace. Think about those moments where you felt safe, where you felt happy, and find a way to recreate those moments.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. And to wrap up, with where people can find you online. You mentioned the podcast with your son. So how can people find you online if they want to hear more about what you're doing?
So I've got a couple different ways. Our podcast is Mom Knows Ball, and we have a YouTube channel. That's where we get the most engagement. But we're on all the platforms that, you know, you can get a podcast. My Instagram is, we have a Mom Knows Ball Instagram, and I have one, Melinda920, and I also have a website, melinda-king.com. And so I am looking forward to engaging with you and others.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it too. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you today about introspection as liberation. And I really hope that the folks who are listening really got something out of it. First of all, to just see themselves in your story, but to also think about, like, what are the ways that I can experience introspection or actually do the act of introspection without having to spend $1 million. Because you don't have to. Like, whatever your budget is, and that's time and money, whatever that budget is, you have the time, you have the opportunity to still reflect and be introspective.
And you owe that to yourself.
You do.
You owe that to yourself.
You do. So I'm going to speak to you. You owe it to yourself to be introspective. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. Catch up on previous episodes on the Living Corporate Network and on YouTube. You're also invited to join our exclusive community for access to early episode releases, exclusive content, live events, and more.